Ecology Part 1, What Shapes an Ecosystem? Well, what is ecology? It is the scientific study of interactions among organisms, and how those organisms interact with their environment or their surroundings. Now this reveals a relationship between the living or biotic factors and the non-living or abiotic parts of the world. We start off with a species, which is a group of organisms so similar that they can reproduce together and create fertile offspring. When we get a group of one single type of species together, we call them a population. So an example would be a population of white-tailed deer out in the forest. We're just looking at the white-tailed deer. Now, communities are interactions between different populations living in a defined area. So that white-tailed deer with the foxes, with the squirrels, with the trees, a whole bunch of different populations living together. A change in one of the populations, so let's say all the white-tailed deer were killed off, can change a community. An ecosystem not only looks at the living or biotic factors, but the non-living or abiotic factors. These abiotic factors may be things such as the temperature, the soil, rocks, light, things that are non-living that can affect that ecosystem. A biome is a group of ecosystems that have a similar climate or similar type of community. We see these as deserts or as tropics, the tundras, the grasslands. And when we look at all the biomes together, we call it a biosphere. It is the portion of the earth that supports life, all the way from the highest altitudes to the deepest oceans. Here's a diagram of those levels of organization. Habitat versus niche. The habitat is where the organism lives. Now, organisms can use different strategies to help them live in a certain environment. Now, the niche is its job that it has. Every organism has a specific job that it does in its environment, or the role and position that it plays. This may be how it meets its needs for food, shelter, how it survives, how it reproduces, but it's its job. Community interactions. As different organisms tend to play for different resources or limited resources, we tend to see competition. We can have interspecies competition, which is in between different organisms, different species, or we can have intraspecies competition, which is between organisms of the same species. Now, competitive exclusion states that no two species can occupy the same niche in the same habitat at the same time. One will always win out, and the other one will have to find either a different time or a different habitat or a different job. Predation. Interaction between one organism that captures and feeds on another organism. It is harmful to one and beneficial to the other. The predator is the animal that captures and kills and consumes the prey. It is referred to as the predator-prey relationship. Symbiosis, or living together. We've got three types. Mutualism, both benefit. Commensalism, one benefits, the other one doesn't really care, such as our sea anemone and our clownfish. Sea anemone doesn't really care that the clownfish is there, but the clownfish gets protection from all the other predators by swimming through the sea anemone. Then we have parasitism, where one organism benefits and the other one is harmed. Not killed, but is harmed. Succession, or change over time of an ecosystem. Ecosystems do change. It is an orderly, natural change of species replacement that takes place in a community of an ecosystem. Organisms can modify the community so that other organisms have an opportunity to come in. Also, succession tends to lead to more diverse, more complex food webs being supported. We also eventually see a stable, or what is known as a climax community, that undergoes very little change. So, we tend to have bare soil starting off in a primary succession. And then we see over time, we'll see grasses grow, we'll see shrubs grow, we'll see new organisms moving in and out and taking over. And that's what we're talking about with succession, is change over time of an ecosystem. So, again, we've got two different types. Primary succession is a sequential development of living communities from bare rock. So we have bare rock. We have gone out and paved somewhere. We've got bare rock. Or a lava flow has come out and put bare rock. But we have bare rock. Then we have what is known as a pioneer species, which is the first species to populate that bare rock. It's going to be typically lichen or moss are going to be our pioneer species. And then as those die, creating more soil, we can see small grasses start to grow. Those die out, creating more soil. So we see small shrubs, then we see trees, we see conifers, and then we go to our hardwoods. Secondary succession is when a community has had some sort of disruption. It doesn't go down to bare rock again, because it has soil already there. This might be a forest fire, or a hurricane has come through and torn down all the trees, but there's still going to be soil there, so we're not seeing primary succession. So again, primary succession starts with bare rock. We see our lichens and our moss, and we see our soil growing and growing. And as it gets deeper and deeper, we see bigger trees and plants and organisms start moving in. Energy flows. Energy flows in one direction through an ecosystem, from the sun or our organic compounds, to autotrophs, which are also known as producers, then to various heterotrophs, or also known as consumers. Producers. Sunlight is the main source of all light on this planet. Producers and autotrophs are going to be the same thing. They use the energy from the sun or from chemical compounds to manufacture their own nutrients. Examples are plants and some unicellular organisms. They can do this in two ways: photosynthesis, using the sun to go through photosynthesis and have starches and sugars created, or chemosynthesis, using the chemicals around them, the inorganic molecules, and building up their nutrients. An example would be tube worms down in the deepest parts of the ocean, using the hydrothermal vents that secrete hydrogen sulfide. Those tube worms take in that hydrogen sulfide to create the nutrients they need. Consumers or heterotrophs, same thing, are organisms that cannot make their own food and must feed on other organisms. Now we've got many different types. Herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat meat, omnivores eat both meat and plants, detritivores eat carrion or feces, and refuse, which is waste material. And then we have decomposers that break down complex compounds of dead and decaying plants and animals. Here we see detritivores eating refuse and waste. Here's a roly-poly on some feces, and then we see our vultures eating our refuse or our waste, our dead material. And decomposers are going to be bacteria, fungi, and some protists. Now, when we look at how they actually interact with each other, if we're looking at one sequential step after step after step, that's going to be a food chain. Series of steps in which organisms transfer energy by eating and being eaten. We go from autotrophs, or our producers, to heterotrophs, or consumers, and then eventually down the road to our decomposers. A trophic level is each step. So we have our producer, which is going to be our grass. Our primary consumer, so that's a trophic level, is our grasshopper. Then we have our secondary consumer, which is a snake that eats our grasshopper. Then we have a tertiary consumer, means 3, which is going to be our hawk that eats our snake. And eventually our hawk will die, and the decomposers will get a hold of it. Real-life food chain. First off, we start off with our plant, which is our producer. We always start off with our producer. Then we have our primary consumer, which will be our dragonfly that's feeding off the plant. Then we have our secondary consumer, which is our frog, going to eat our pretty dragonfly. Then we have our tertiary consumer, who's our snake, going to eat our wonderful frog, and so forth. Food web shows all possible feeding relationships, not just one pathway, but all of the different trophic levels in a community. Again, starting with our producers down here, algae. It's not just one pathway showing where it can go. There's multiple things that can feed off our algae. We can have the squid, or the emperor penguin, or the seal, or the other penguin, or the ice fish and toothfish, or the humpback whale. All of these guys can feed off this algae. And it makes more of a web versus a chain. Here's another example of a food web showing many different pathways that we can take. Now, we can pull out a chain from a food web. You start off with our plant. Then I'm going to go one pathway. We're going to go nematode. Then we're going to go arthropod. Then we're going to go to more arthropods. Then I'm going to come down here to animal. That is one chain. That is one route. Not showing all of them, but one. Ecological pyramids. These are diagrams or representations of the amount of energy and matter in an ecosystem within each trophic level. There are three types. We have energy pyramid, showing the energies measured in joules. Biomass, showing how much food is available in grams. And our pyramid of numbers, showing the actual number of organisms. Now, we all have this rule of 10. The rule of 10% states that only 10% is available at the next level. Only 10% goes up to the next level. Only 10% to the next level. So, if we had 10,000 joules available for this plant. Now, the grasshopper only gets 10% of that, which is 1,000 joules. Our mouse that eats our grasshopper will only get 10% of that, so that's 100 joules. And our snake that ate the mouse will only get 10% of that, which is 10 joules. Now, where does the rest of the energy go? The rest of the energy actually goes for this organism to grow and develop and use, and some is let off in heat, but not all of it is transferred to the next energy level. Biomass, the amount of living tissue given in each trophic level, expressed in grams, and it represents the amount of potential food available. Again, only 10% goes up to the next level. Pyramid of numbers. As you go through an ecological pyramid, the numbers of each type of organism decreases. Again, we tend to see the rule of 10. We have 100 blades of grass, and we'll have about 10 grasshoppers eating on those. Then we'll have one bird eating those grasshoppers. So our pyramid tends to go up with less and less number of organisms as we increase our trophic level. Well, that's all I got for you now. Bye.